Hello. All right, today we're going to talk about the pathway of blood through the heart. So one of the things you do in this unit is learn to trace a drop of blood through the heart and then through the body. And so eventually, by the time we finish this unit, you'll be able to take a drop of blood and say started in the kidney and have that blood return from the kidney all the way to the heart and go all the way through the heart and out to the lungs, back to the heart, and then back out to maybe the big toe. So all that's coming, but we're going to do it in kind of small sections. So today we're just going to talk about how blood goes through the heart. And so we've done a little bit of this when I did Introduction to the Heart, but we're going to do more detail now. So if you remember, look at the heart. So you have, I like to draw my little cross through it. Okay, so you have your right side and your left side. So you have your right atrium and you have your left atrium. Let me change pens. What would be a good color? Maybe yellow. Okay. Left, that's not good either. Black. Let's try black. Left ventricle and right ventricle and left ventricle. All right. One thing I don't know if I mentioned in the introduction to the heart, the size of the wall, the left side, the myocardial layer is much larger in the left side than is the right side. The same amount of blood is in each chamber. It holds the same volume. But the left side muscle is thicker. It's stronger because it's got to pump the blood further. Remember, the right ventricle is only pumping blood out to the lungs, and the left ventricle is pumping blood through the aorta out to the entire body. So just a reminder about these vessels, because I'm not sure where you are in watching your vessel videos. So this is going to be your superior vena cava, okay, so returning blood from the head and the upper body. This is going to be your inferior vena cava, returning blood from the lower extremities and the abdomen. This is your pulmonary trunk, okay, and it's going to carry, it's an artery, carry blood out to the left lung and then the right lung, okay, so you have your left pulmonary artery and then your right pulmonary artery. So that blood's going to go out to a lung on the left side and a lung on the right side. You're going to get gas exchange, and that blood will return through a pulmonary vein. So these are your left pulmonary veins, and these are your right pulmonary veins. Okay, so just make sure you understand your big arteries and veins. This very large one is your aorta. Okay, so again, I'm not sure where you are in watching your vessel videos, so I just want to make sure that we know the names of these major arteries and veins. All right, so what we want to do is we want to trace blood from the vena cava, okay, out to the aorta. That is our plan. How do we get blood from the vena cava out to the lungs, back to the heart, and out to the aorta? All right, so that's what we're going to do. So remember, the blood has to go through two circuits, the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. And so I've written this out because I know some people need to see it visually written out, and this is what you're going to be able to do on the test. You're going to be able to write out all these steps because you can't really draw it out for me on an exam. All you can do is type it in, or write or type in step by step, or write in if you happen to be on campus, maybe with a piece of paper, because some of my students will take a paper test. So if you're taking a computer, you'll type it. If you're not, you'll write it. Okay, squirrel. All right, systemic, again, here again are the steps for the systemic circuit. All right, so let's do it so I can talk you through it and see what goes on. So the superior and inferior vena cava, the blood is going to return from both of these, okay, and also the coronary sinus. So the coronary sinus is going to bring, remember the heart has its own set of arteries and veins, the coronary circuit, so that blood's got to return as well. So blood will return from the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the coronary sinus to the right atrium, okay? The right atrium, the blood will fall through the, you got to remember the valves, so to the tricuspid valve, so right atrium through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will contract. That will send the blood, got to do the valves, through the, which valve? Pulmonary semilunar valve, out to the pulmonary trunk to the pulmonary arteries. It'll go from the pulmonary arteries out to the pulmonary capillaries in the lungs, okay, where you'll get exchange. So you're going to get oxygen and then drop off, so like I say, get oxygen and drop off CO2, okay? So that oxygen-rich blood will return by the pulmonary veins to the left ventricle, all right? It will fall through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. It will then be pumped as the ventricle contracts through the aortic semilunar valve out the aorta. All right, so that is what this says, okay? So blood goes into the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve, into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it goes to the pulmonary semilunar valve to the pulmonary trunk. From the pulmonary trunk to the pulmonary arteries, to the lung arterioles, to the lung capillaries, to the lung venules, back to the pulmonary veins, to the left atrium, okay? Once it's in the left atrium, it goes to the mitral valve, to the left ventricle, from the left ventricle to the aortic semilunar valve, to the aorta, out to the rest of the body, okay? All right. So I did this. I've got another slide just so it would look a little bit bigger, and do it one more time. I think repetition with this is probably the best way to go. All right, so blood returning from the body and the head, and then everywhere venous return is coming from into the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve, into the right ventricle, through the pulmonary semilunar valve, out the pulmonary trunk, out the pulmonary arteries. Remember, arteries become arterioles, arterioles become capillaries. You get exchanged in the lung capillaries. Those capillaries become lung venules. Lung venules become pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins are going to have that blood empty into the left atrium. That blood will fall through the mitral valve or bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. Left ventricle will contract, force that blood through the aortic semilunar valve out to the aorta. Okay, that's how blood goes through the heart. So we've taken it from the vena cava all the way out to the aorta. Okay, so this is all of those steps once again. So as you're doing this, don't think of this. It's not the right side contracting, the left side contracting. My students want to go, okay, the right side contracts, sends it to the lungs, and the left side contracts and sends it to the body. They're happening at the same time. The left and right side contract at the same time. So when a heart beats, it's sending blood to the lungs and the body at the same time. All right. So I don't want you to think it's not like that. It's blood to the lungs, blood to the body, blood to the lungs, blood to the body, all at the same time. Okay. So equal amounts of blood are being pumped to both circuits at the same time. The pulmonary circuit is short and it's low pressure. Okay, the systemic circuit is long and high pressure, and one of the reasons is look at the size of the muscle. The left ventricle has a huge myocardium. It's about 3 times thicker than the right. It's much stronger, so it can pump blood with more force to get it all the way through the body. It's got to go all the way from the heart all the way down to your pinky toe. Okay, the lungs are right there. Okay, they don't need a lot of. It's not very far to go. Plus, you don't want to really blow out those capillaries in the lung. You don't need a high amount of force to send that blood out to the lungs. So the right side has a smaller amount of muscle mass. It doesn't contract with much force and cause much pressure as blood goes out to the lungs. When you measure someone's blood pressure, you're measuring the pressure of the blood that's leaving the left ventricle going out the aorta. That's what you're measuring. You're not measuring pulmonary pressures. All right, so this is what I do in my class. I have a way of doing a blood trace, and so I draw my heart like this. Okay. All right, and then I draw a cross so I can figure out my 4 chambers. All right. And then I draw in my vessels. So I'll draw in a vessel. So this is going to be my vena cava, and we'll just assume it's inferior, superior, and coronary sinus, just blood coming in. I draw my pulmonary trunk out this way, okay, just so I can kind of visually get it separated in my mind how the blood is moving. Then I have my pulmonary veins that are coming back in, and then I have my aorta, all right? So those are my 4 major veins that I need to deal, or vessels that I need to deal with, that blood needs to either come in or go out of. All right. So here's my pulmonary trunk. Here are my pulmonary veins, and this is my aorta. Here's my right atrium. Here's my left atrium. Here's my left. I do that every time. Left ventricle, and here's my. I did it again. Left ventricle. And I need to draw that a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can should have drawn that bigger. This is just like sitting in class with me, guys. You're getting the benefit of an actual lecture. All right, let's draw my heart. Okay. This is what I do in class. Right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. All right, here's my vena cava coming in. Here's my pulmonary trunk going out. Here are my pulmonary veins coming in. Here's my aorta coming out. Okay. Now, the next thing you need to do, we've got to remember those valves. So write your valves in. All right, so we know, do we have a valve for the vena cava? As blood's coming into the right atrium, is there a valve? No, but there is a valve here, right? That's your tricuspid valve. Is there a valve as blood goes from the right ventricle out to the pulmonary trunk? Yes, that's your pulmonary semilunar valve, okay? Is there a valve as blood's coming from your pulmonary veins to your left atrium? No. Is there a valve from your left atrium to your left ventricle? Yes, your mitral valve. Is there a valve going from your left ventricle out your aorta? Yes, that's your aortic semilunar valve. Okay, so now you've basically got everything there except lungs. So you need to say you've got some lungs because blood's coming back from the lungs, and pulmonary trunk, blood's going out to the lungs. So you need to put your lungs in there. So now, if you'll do this, so you know, have a scratch piece of paper and be able to draw this out. It allows you to kind of visualize and make sure you don't skip any steps. So I always tell my students, draw this first. This is kind of your map of how to chase the blood through the heart. So you'll say, let me change colors. All right, so we're going to use orange. Okay, so tracing blood. So you would write each one of these steps out. I don't really have enough room to write everything out. But what you would write is blood enters the right atrium, okay, right atrium. It goes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, through the pulmonary semilunar valve, out the pulmonary trunk, then to the pulmonary arteries, right? Pulmonary arterioles, pulmonary capillaries, pulmonary venules, okay, coming back through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, through the mitral valve, into the left ventricle, through the aortic semilunar valve, and out the aorta, okay? And so when you walk yourself through that, you can take the blood from the venous return side all the way out to the arterial exiting point, the aorta. And so on the exam, what you're going to write are going to be the steps that look like this. Okay, so you'll just do it in a series just like this. You'll name each structure that the blood has to pass as it's going through these circuits. Okay, and we'll probably have another practice or two because we're going to practice going out, like I said, to the big toe and back, and then so we'll do this several more times before you have your actual exam. All right, so just start practicing. If you can learn the pathway through the heart, that's half of the pathway. So when you trace a drop of blood, you'll get at least half credit if you can do the pathway through the heart. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about today, and I will see you again in another video. Thank you.